Narcissists don't lose when someone argues with them. They don't lose when someone confronts them. They don't even lose when someone exposes every lie they've ever told. They lose the moment they meet a person who refuses to be controlled, a person who refuses to be emotionally manipulated, a person who stops reacting. That person is you. You defeat the narcissist the moment you decide you will no longer play their game, because everything they do depends on your participation. Everything. Their charm, their manipulation, their anger, their silent treatment, their blame shifting, their chaos. None of it works unless you react. A narcissist cannot function without an audience. They need someone to impress, someone to provoke, someone to confuse, someone to emotionally drain. Without that, they stand alone with themselves. And that is their greatest fear. Narcissists depend on emotional chaos. They need it the way a drowning person needs air. They feed on the rise and fall of your emotions. They gauge their power based on how deeply they can affect you. If they can make you angry, they feel in control. If they can make you jealous, they feel superior. If they can make you apologize for things you didn't do, they feel validated. If they can make you doubt your reality, they feel victorious. But when your emotions become steady, when your reactions become calm, when your mind becomes centered, you take away their oxygen. The fire goes out, and they start to unravel. Stoicism teaches that real power is internal. It cannot be taken, only surrendered. Narcissists thrive when you surrender your peace, your clarity, your balance. They lose when you reclaim it. And so, the battle with a narcissist is not external. It is not about outsmarting them, out-arguing them, or out-maneuvering them. It is an internal mastery, a psychological discipline, a refusal to get pulled into their storm. To defeat the narcissist, you must first understand their pattern. They are predictable in ways they don't realize. They follow a cycle so rigid it becomes almost mechanical. They idealize you, placing you on a pedestal. They study your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, your triggers, your desires. They present themselves as everything you've ever wanted. They mirror your values, your dreams, your personality, but they do this not to love you, but to secure control. Then comes the shift, the devaluation, the sudden coldness, the subtle insults disguised as jokes, the dismissiveness, the gaslighting, the inconsistencies, the hot and cold behavior that keeps you off balance. They want you confused because confusion is leverage. They want you doubting yourself because doubt is control. They want you chasing the version of them you met at the beginning because chasing keeps you in their grip. Eventually comes the discard, the withdrawal, the emotional abandonment. They pull away not because you did something wrong, but because they sense you becoming aware. They sense your strength rising. They sense your clarity forming. They sense their power weakening. And when they feel that loss of control, they retreat, only to return later, attempting to restart the cycle. Not out of love, not out of guilt, but out of hunger for control. But once you understand this pattern, the spell begins to break. You stop internalizing their behavior. You stop personalizing their moods. You stop trying to earn the love they pretended to give. You stop hoping they will change. You start recognizing the pattern for what it is, a psychological trap. A cycle designed to keep you emotionally occupied while they feed on your energy. To defeat the narcissist, you must stop taking responsibility for their behavior. Their cruelty is not a reflection of your worth. Their inconsistency is not your fault. Their emotional instability is not caused by you. Narcissists project their internal emptiness onto others. They blame you for the chaos inside themselves. When they feel insecure, they accuse you. When they feel inferior, they insult you. When they feel guilty, they deflect. When they feel fear, they attack. None of this is about you. This is their inner world spilling out. And once you recognize this, you stop internalizing their actions as truth. The next step is emotional neutrality. Narcissists cannot manipulate a calm mind. They rely on your emotional investment. They rely on your desire to fix things. They rely on your empathy. They rely on your hope. But when you become emotionally neutral, not cold, not bitter, simply calm, you become someone they cannot control. They push buttons that no longer work. They create conflict that no longer affects you. They try to trigger reactions that never appear. And this terrifies them, because without your emotional energy, they have nothing to feed on. Emotional neutrality makes you unpredictable. It makes you untouchable. It makes you uninteresting to them. Narcissists need intensity, positive or negative, praise or argument, admiration or conflict. When you offer neither, they lose interest. They lose power. They lose the ability to influence your world. You become someone they cannot penetrate psychologically. After emotional neutrality comes boundaries. Real boundaries. Not boundaries you mention, not boundaries you hope they respect. Boundaries enforced through action. Narcissists will test every boundary you draw. They need to see if you truly mean it. They will charm you, guilt-trip you, argue with you, flatter you, and provoke you. But when you enforce your boundaries consistently, when you walk away from disrespect, when you refuse to explain yourself, when you don't give second chances to manipulation, you take back power they never should have had. Boundaries do not make the narcissist change. Boundaries make the narcissist irrelevant, because boundaries deny them access to the parts of you they fed on, your energy, your empathy, your stability, your attention. When you enforce boundaries, they are left with their own emptiness, and nothing terrifies them more than confronting themselves. The next step is internal reconstruction, rebuilding your sense of self. Narcissists target people who are naturally empathetic, giving, loyal, and hopeful. These are strengths, but in the hands of a narcissist, they are exploited. To defeat the narcissist, you must reclaim your strengths and use them for yourself, not against yourself. You must rebuild your self-worth independent of their opinions. You must rebuild your confidence independent of their validation. You must rebuild your identity without their influence shaping it. This process requires reflection. It requires self-honesty. It requires acknowledging the ways you abandoned yourself in order to maintain the connection. And it requires forgiving yourself for it, not judging yourself. Because narcissistic abuse is not a failure of strength. It is a misuse of empathy, and empathy becomes powerful when directed inward. After rebuilding your internal power comes the most decisive step, walking away permanently, not with anger, not with revenge, not with the desire to be understood. You walk away because your soul outgrew the cage they tried to keep it in. Narcissists do not fear losing people. They fear losing access to people. They fear losing control. They fear losing someone who sees through them. When you walk away with clarity and peace, you take their illusion with you. And what remains is the truth they avoid. They had no power without your participation. Walking away means no negotiation, no one more conversation, no explanation, no closure seeking. Narcissists do not give closure. They create confusion to maintain control. When you walk away, you create your own closure. You choose peace over answers. You choose self-respect over chaos. You choose healing over the cycle. And that choice destroys the narcissist's illusion of power more than anything you could ever say. Now, understand something deeply. Defeating the narcissist does not mean they will acknowledge defeat. They won't admit you saw through them. They won't admit they lost power. They won't admit they depended on you emotionally. They will pretend they don't care. They will pretend they replaced you. They will pretend you meant nothing. But this is a performance, a facade, a mask protecting their ego, because the loss of control is devastating to them, and the silence that follows is torture. Stoicism teaches that the highest victory is self-mastery. When you master your reactions, you rise above manipulation. When you master your mind, you rise above confusion. When you master your peace, you rise above their chaos. This is how you defeat the narcissist, not through confrontation, but through elevation. Not through retaliation, but through clarity. Not through force, but through self-control. Your power was never in how loudly you responded. Your power was never in how hard you tried to make them understand. Your power was never in how deeply you loved them. Your power was in your ability to reclaim yourself, to choose yourself, to detach with dignity, to walk away with silence that speaks louder than any argument ever could. The narcissist's greatest fear is someone they cannot manipulate, someone they cannot emotionally destabilize, someone they cannot confuse or control, someone who knows their worth, someone who refuses to shrink, someone who stands in their power with calmness, clarity, and certainty. That someone is you. Become calm, become focused, become unstoppable. We are the Stoic Elite.